talk for an hour and a half.
You know, honestly, I'm more versed on the tape show.
Oh,
than I am
hey,
on the
guys.
live show.
Go.
Welcome to the Libertarian Counterpoint. My name is John Cameron, and on your right, we have Veronica Petersen, libertarian activist, grad student in philosophy, and former Young Americans for Liberty.
Yeah.
Okay. And on your left, we have Phillip,
Larrea.
Larrea, okay, yeah. Got the first thing wrong. And you're author and editor of what?
The Minute Dots Investment Newsletter.
Okay. Minute Dots Investment Newsletter. I think I need to read that. Welcome. And so this time of year is interesting for all of us. All of us, whether we're libertarian or not, it's politics, and more politics. We have a trumpet blowing his horn, and we have a former first lady who apparently is more comfortable with pen and paper than she is with anything relating to tech, and so we're going to talk about that to start. First of all, let's and I'm just going to throw this question out there: why isn't Rand Paul doing better? Is it a major party media conspiracy, or is he just a bad campaigner, or who'd like to answer that?
I think he's just not a sideshow, or not like as exciting of a sideshow as some other people running. He's not going to make himself a joke, and he's not going to make, he's not going to profit off the fact that people view him as a joke. And I don't think that he can compete with the joke that we have running right now.
So normally when you use the word...
Is, the problem with when he today makes a statement about the Kim Davis issue, the Kentucky woman who won't issue marriage license to same-sex couples, and he came on the side of Kim Davis on that, and it puts him square in the middle of sort of the religious right conservative. So the one thing that he was supposed to get was that libertarian faction, and of course a statement like that is anathema to a libertarian. So, the people are looking at Trump and looking at Sanders, and no matter which party you're with, we're just glad that it's somebody putting on a show. Because we were all going in thinking Bush and Clinton, and that was an accomplished fact, a fait accompli. So just the entertainment value of the beauty pageant guy and the socialist, at least it's something different.
Okay. So I agree with both of you a little bit. Are you familiar? Mark Cuban is a very successful entrepreneur, and he owns a sports team, Dallas Mavericks, and he's very outspoken. And he said that Trump's appeal was that he doesn't speak with political correctness, and people are so tired of political correctness that no matter what he says, people view him favorably. So I think it's a little bit all of the above. The status quo needs to be maintained, and no matter what Trump says, basically, as long as he remains in the Republican Party, even if he gets elected, and I would hope that people would wake up the morning of voting day and say, well, show's over, now where's the real candidate? But I think the fact that he says what's on his mind and doesn't mind the fallout and doesn't mind the skeletons in the closet, and the fact that he is, as you said, he's entertainment. And we're in a world now where entertainment without, and I don't want to denigrate the man himself. Entertainment doesn't have to have value. There's some people called the Kardashians or I don't know what they are. They're not the people for you Star Trek fans on Star Trek. These are people who are famous for being famous and will do anything to be famous. Anytime you look on any of the major media websites, they're somewhere in the top 10 or 12 stories. And these people have no discernible skills other than marketing themselves and appearing naked. People follow them. Why? Because they do outrageous things and they're entertaining. And I think that speaks to why Donald Trump is so popular. So, but what about Rand Paul, the candidate? Even amongst other serious candidates, he is not doing very well. He's like 5th or 6th among the Republicans after the trumpeter. So why do you think that's?
He has nothing to distinguish him. Okay. So for the people that will go Bush in the hopes of winning, you know, the sort of let's call him the moderate Republican, or you know, I've always loved the characterization after the last election by a columnist named Bret Stephens, who writes for the Wall Street Journal, and he was after the last election, which the Republicans just threw it. You know, he described it as the invincible stupidity of the Republican Party. And so Trump appeals to, he will say he's not a man of substance.
So he takes that to the next level.
He's taking it to the ultimate level and saying, I appeal to the invincible stupidity of the Republican base. Okay. Not all the base. I just say that's where his base is. Mm-hmm. If you go to a moderate and you have people like Huckabee trying to one-up him, and you have, you know, Ted Cruz trying to one-up him, and all these people trying to go even further to the right, if there is a right, to Trump, that all you've got left in the middle is Bush.
Okay.
And Rand Paul is sort of, you know, would be the alternative to Bush, but who cares? We don't need one.
I don't know. I would think based upon, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but it seems to me based upon what Americans say, which is we're tired of the establishment. We want, you know, if you ask people on an individual basis and don't label it libertarianism, 60% of the population probably leans toward libertarian thought on much of the platform. I think he is a bland guy, and I also think that he isn't outrageous. He's passionate sometimes. We'll see him filibuster, things like that, and get behind his principles. But I don't think, in general, he comes across as the standard bearer for freedom. I think he's kind of too laid back. I mean, what do you think?
I think maybe, I don't know, he's such a vibrant speaker. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't really know if that's the issue or not. I like what you're saying, but I'm honestly a little bit surprised by it. I think that he might just be kind of a turnoff for people just because of Ron Paul. You know, so many people are terrified, you know, of Ron Paul. And so I think that, you know, he's not getting support just because of his father. And then he's also kind of alienating the people that do adamantly support Ron Paul. You know, they bicker back and forth, like, should you support Rand or not? And, you know, so he doesn't really have that following to really push him ahead. So, yeah, I'm kind of saddened by it. I wanted to see him, you know.
Well, and it's a shame that I think in Iowa and North Carolina, an independent candidate called D's Nuts
yes.
is polling. He's a 15-year-old kid from Iowa, actually, who started this sort of avatar. Leans libertarian, as they say, and he's getting 9% in North Carolina and 7% in Iowa. Rand Paul's not getting those numbers. If he had even tapped into that, you know, he would be sitting up there at a very strong second or third to launch from. And I think Rand Paul's problem is that he's just a straight down the middle Republican, and he missed that opportunity to, as some people like to say, lean libertarian, where he might have been sort of outrageous in his own right in a good way. And he missed that opportunity trying to manage the middle, and as a result, he has nothing.
You know, one of the things I wonder is early on he pushed back on some abortion questions. I don't remember specifically what they were, but he did. He told the reporters, you know, go ask the head of the DNC. And I wonder if maybe the media is actually afraid to report on him because they're going to be put in those positions. You know, so the media doesn't want to be in the spotlight itself, which is exactly what he did. So he's going to just have less media attention. I mean, D's Nuts has nothing but a great name. You know, there is no support behind him. You know,
Which
there's
says
nothing.
something all by itself.
I know
doesn't
it
Yeah.
says that we really
So
want
why
a
don't
sideshow.
we suggest for in 2020 that he changes his name to Big Nuts.
Yeah, that maybe that would be a good start.
Well, let's talk about, since you brought up the abortion issue, which is, unfortunately, I think that the Republicans believe that they need the Christian right to win an election, yet because they've chosen to label themselves pro-life, they immediately eliminate 42% of the vote. So they have to scramble and have an outstanding platform everywhere else. Basically, 42% of the people in the country are immediately going to vote against them because of that one issue. And there is no other single issue that's polarizing. So let's talk about Ben Carson, who came out of nowhere and is now polling, apparently. He's a neurosurgeon. Yeah. And does anybody know for certain what his stance on abortion is? He's pro-life.
Ben Carson is, they actually did a kind of a...
Not Johnny, but Ben.
Yeah. They compared him to Trump. Not that Trump has positions, but essentially the thing that he is on the religious right.
So
what
we'd say
distinguishes
right to
him
life.
is the correct, and what distinguishes him is he is also a proponent of the flat tax. So whereas Trump says, well, you know, graduated tax makes sense. If I'm wealthy, I could and should pay a little more. But
Well, he
Ben
is paying
Carson
more.
is a flat tax guy.
If you make $1 million and there's a flat tax of 10%, you pay $100,000. If you make $10,000 and pay a flat tax of 10%, you're paying $1,000. So the person who makes the million is paying, what's the math, 100 times more? Huh? So, you know, he is paying more.
Well, but here's the thing: is if you look at it, the flat tax is actually two tiers, 15 and 25, as it's been proposed. And this is going back to Steve Forbes. The issue is not just the federal tax, but also the state, county, and city taxes. So that
Sales taxes and all the other taxes are called regressive. Yeah.
And so what will happen is that with the flat tax, as is scored out, the poorest among us will pay as much in taxes. The middle class will have a substantial tax increase, and the wealthiest among us will have a substantial tax decrease. And so when people scored that through those four governments, where the median household income, say, making $55,000 a year is losing $22,000 to taxes, 40%. The wealthy person making $1 million a year, especially how he disposed of it, is actually probably coming in at around 15 or 16%. That middle that I spoke of is up there around 60%. So it really, as a flat tax, it's not very flat at all.
So as it's proposed, the 15 and
Correct.
25%. So I know a little bit about math, and not a lot, but I'm sure with an Excel spreadsheet in about a day I could fix that. So it is possible. The problem with let's talk about why Ben Carson might be so popular. I mean, he's obviously a brilliant guy, and people will say he's the smartest man I know, and he's done well, and he has a great backstory, and he's black, if you've never seen a picture of him. And he's a good speaker, and he's charming. And from what I've read of sound bites, because I don't see that he's got a platform, I haven't seen one. He seems to, on the one hand, be pro flat tax, but he's also pro-life, which again kills 42% of the vote. And he's even though he's a trained physician who should know better based upon all the peer-reviewed studies, he's not talking pounding the table about getting rid of the war on drugs, from what I've seen.
Or Obama.
So, or Okami Care, as I like to call it. That's my new name for it, Okami Care, folks. And so he's basically all over the place on his platform. And are people, is the electorate in the United States so stupid that they think that someone who is smart and a good man, that's enough to lead this massive bureaucracy and play the dirty knife fighting? It makes knife fighting look clean. that you need to get anything done in this country? Do they really think that?
Is
Do
this
you
a
think?
serious question?
Yes.
I mean, look at Trump right now.
Okay.
I mean-
So, well, so
I think it's cynicism right now.
Yeah.
You know, in 2015, we're a long way away, and if you talk to the average person, they're enjoying the entertainment value and seeing if something outrageous gets said that maybe resonates, that forces whoever it's going to be, whether it's Bush or Clinton, to the right or left. And so it's not stupidity so much, I believe, as it is just outright cynicism at this point.
you vote cynicism. I vote stupidity. Where do you come in?
I think, leaning towards. How about, well, I don't know. You know, we see Hilary, I saw her speaking in front of a John Deere tractor the other day.
Was it moving toward or help?
No,
Did I
it
say that
wasn't.
out loud?
It was
Oh,
not.
no.
But, you know, I mean, there's something, like, if there's something appealing about somebody, you know, you just want to support them. And so maybe I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic than you.
Okay.
But, you know,
Well, let's talk about one of the things that whoever is our president, unfortunately, because of the way our laws are set up and our tariffs and our rules and our basically, in many cases, socialism that we have in this country, and the aggressive foreign policy of making mistakes in 173 countries around the world. Not that I'm biased on this. The next president is going to have to deal with another superpower. And as a matter of fact, pretty near, from an economic standpoint, a hyperpower, and that's China. And who, as president, do you think would do the best job in the future? I think current economic war we're having with China. I think that's what's going on with their stock market manipulation and manipulation of their currency and all the rest of that, and perhaps even a shooting war with them. Who would be the best person to deal with that?
I don't
On
see.
three.
I don't see a candidate out there.
I don't either.
And I do think that
So they're gonna
you know,
win then.
that's sort of my bailiwick, is what goes on with currencies and what goes on with markets. China is in a desperate strait. They are forced. There was a report out today by Bank of America Merrill Lynch saying that China has had to dump about $400 billion worth of U.S. Treasuries to meet their cash flow needs. China didn't so much manipulate currency. In fact, China's currency has changed less to the dollar than the euro or Japan since its announcement on August 11th. What China did that does matter, when they made that announcement, it was to align them with the IMF and how the IMF considers
The Impossible Missions Force or the
yes,
International
exactly,
Monetary
the International Monetary Fund.
Okay, all right,
Because
Because that would be kind of cool.
It has rules regarding what currencies are allowed to be used to give out loans to, say, third world countries and that sort of thing. China didn't qualify with yuan. It didn't, because it did not mark to market on a daily basis. So what China's announcement did was to change from the yuan is worth whatever we say it's worth, to on every evening we will mark to market according to international standards, which means that it's that much closer to replacing, or at least it's that much closer to making the dollar no longer the
Competing
world's reserve
with the dollar.
currency.
All right, so that's what I mean. One of the things I mean about economic war. Let's for a minute remember history. You were not old enough for this. This was back when. Never mind. Well, so do you remember when Japanese goods flooded the U.S. market and they were junk? Okay. So there was a cheap yen, so it was cheap labor. The country was based on manufacturing, and the first products that hit the shores of the U.S. when I was a child, I'm not going to say when that was, if it said made in Japan on it, was junk. Right? So similar to China. Now, China's putting out some pretty fantastic goods, high quality products. They've moved a lot of people out of the farms and into the factories, and they have created a huge manufacturing base and ability to produce goods. So, similar to Japan. Japan used, whether it was intentionally or unintentionally, an inflated stock market and inflated land values in in their country, similar to what China did recently. They managed to have nobody talked about their stock market going up by 90%, but if it drops by 30%, it's the end of the world. So they created a huge amount of wealth, which they used in some places to buy real companies and other places that actually had value. So I see kind of a similar thing going on with China and Japan.
The interesting thing, though, is that when you look at how we manage, it's exactly the same way.
Or mismanaged.
So with our Federal Reserve and $3.5 trillion, and the fact that all of our money is going into and out of stock market investment, and the problem with both China, Japan, with the Eurozone, and the U.S. is that at the end of the day, it's impoverishing the people. And when that happens, there's no demand. So that works against China. So China's problem now is that they have said that their wealthy cannot consume, but they have at the same time said they haven't created wealth for their citizens. So they're in exactly the same boat that we're in.
Well, but we're going to move on to speaking of another candidate, and her name's Hilary in a minute. But let's talk about. Let me ask you this question. Remember in our country when we had so many people involved in producing food? We don't remember personally, and neither do I because we're way too young. But there used to be an awful lot of people on the farm. And then they moved to the factory and they talked about these horrible conditions in factories, and especially you can look at Victorian England. They moved from the purity of honest labor on the farm to these horrible conditions in these evil factories. Now, it turns out that in China on these farms, they were getting up before dawn and working until basically late at night, 360 days a year, up to their knees in rice paddy water. And if anybody wants to do that for a living, then more power to you. So I think that if you look at the standard of living of their populace in general, even though we look at it and it's horrible from our standpoint, because they can't take off from their 9-to-5 job and go get a Starbucks like most of us can if we even work 9 to 5.
Of course you
but
can.
compared to where they were, there's been a tremendous improvement in life for many Chinese, don't you think?
Well, I know so. My nephew lives and teaches over there, and comes back during the summer and reports back on conditions. And generally speaking, talking about going out to a Starbucks, you bet they can. There's a whole lot of Starbucks in China.
There's Starbucks.
The difference between the two people at this point, because the U.S. has moved in the China direction of a kind of a top-down, autonomous, command and control environment, the difference between China and the U.S. is essentially, and my nephew would tell you this, is essentially that our police are far more aggressive than theirs. So he says over there, the police are just civil servants, and if they get through their day, they're going to get paid, and nobody's interested in anything.
Yeah.
But here, it's quite a different story. So if there's one difference between the two countries, that's what he would point out to you.
Huh. That's a little bit different than the press is saying. So let's talk about somebody who might have to deal with China and all the intricacies of a high-tech world. And this is somebody known as Hilary Clinton. And this is my question. As Secretary of State, she had an email server in her home and did business 51,000 or something emails. And when asked the question about was your server wiped, was your computer wiped, she replied with, you mean like with a cloth? Because I don't know this tech stuff. So does Hilary have a problem with tech, or does she have a problem with the truth?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I think anybody that has a private server in their own home probably knows maybe enough about tech to have a private server in their own home. So I think that she's trying really hard to make it look like she is just not tech savvy, but I don't believe it. And she probably does need to be more up to date on tech. I mean, it's 2015. I don't know who she thinks the people are these days, but we're kind of tech culture these days, and she really should be on top of these things. So,
And
Well,
you,
and her,
Phillip?
the person that set up her server refused to testify
Took the fifth today, right?
today, depending on when this airs. And
Oh, wait, no, took the fifth last
right.
week. Yeah.
And took the fifth on all the questions. And what has come out of it is clearly, if we underestimate people like Hillary Clinton, they got to where they got, not by being stupid people. So I always give them credit for being very intelligent people, very
Crafty.
shrewd people.
yeah, so it's
Shrewd.
like, yeah.
And if that's true, then you can't believe the naivete, which means that you have to give them credit for premeditation. And this is on
So
a number of
you're
issues.
voting for, she has a problem with the truth rather than tech.
Well, there's no, the great, today was a day full of ironies. Commenting on the Kim Davis situation, she said, by golly, the law is the law, and if you break it, you break it.
Ooh, so Hillary will be in prison, basically the Official Secrets Act and many other things that she broke repeatedly. So I'll do my little closing statement, and then we'll kind of wrap up the show. And if you have anything you want to say, this show anyway, not the show in general, unless we've killed off our audience here. I really don't want a president who asks, what does this little red button do? Oops. So in this case, I agree with you that she's walking a dangerous line of trying to appear technically non-savvy, so she doesn't reinforce the fact that she has a real heavy problem with anything related to the truth, as did her husband. So on that note, unless you have anything you want to throw in the next 15 seconds or so, we're going to go ahead and kind of wind this show down. So this has been the Libertarian Counterpoint. And you can watch us, if you'd like, every issue on YouTube. And it's really simple to find. You can look for me. No, you just put in Libertarian Counterpoint, and you'll find the YouTube episodes. You can also find us streaming at 4 a.m. on Saturday and at 8 o'clock. Well, you can find us at 8 o'clock on Access Sacramento on Thursday night. So if you look for us, we're going to be there. And hopefully, as now and in the future, we're going to help you identify and clarify the Libertarian Counterpoint. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful evening.